So our final keynote speaker is a professor in the Faculty of Education at the University of Cambridge. He's regarded as the world leader for research and policy on young carers. He has 560 publications and keynote conference papers, including 18 authored and edited books. He's been featured in 9 television documentaries, TEDx talks, and more recently, an interview with TV journalist and political commentator Andrew Marr on the future of caring in Britain. He's been recognised by multiple organisations, including AccessHE, who named him as a role model for his research, which has put young carers at the heart of many university widening participation plans. In his childhood, Saul was a young carer. As an adult, he also cared for his mother, and he now lives in the lovely seaside town of Brighton in England. This is a pre-recorded session due to the time difference, and I hand you now over to Saul Becker to look at the secret lives of young carers.
To talk about the secret lives of young carers. I'm Saul Becker, I'm a professor at Cambridge, and I've spent the last 30 years researching, writing about young carers, and also being involved in policy and practice issues. And it's some years since I was last in Australia. But it's a delight to have the opportunity to talk to you today about children who are carers, and particularly their experiences and their secret lives. When I was thinking about what I would want to say for this presentation, I looked up the definition of secret. And of course, secret is about being kept hidden or separate from the knowledge of others, not open, not public, kept private, or not revealed. And to a large extent, the lives of young carers have been secret all along. We know that young carers have existed for time immemorial. Dickens wrote about young carers in some of his great novels, but no one ever described them or labelled them as young carers. But they are a group of children who have existed for as long as we can remember, or as long as we can record, in novels, in literature, and in their own reality. And the fact that we haven't got a label for them in those days is because they were very hidden and very invisible. They were and lived secret lives. Young carers are children and young people who are providing care to other family members because of an illness, a disability, a mental health, or an addiction problem. And in the UK, we refer to young carers as being children under the age of 18, and we refer to young adult carers as children and young people aged 18 to 24. That's a distinction we have in the UK, but in Australia, of course, young carers are up to the age of 24. But the research here, because it makes a distinction, I felt it important to explain the difference between the two groups. But effectively, they're all young people with caring responsibilities. When I started my research 30 years ago, we had no in-depth knowledge of the lives and experiences of young carers. There was little research. There were no official figures. There was very little awareness or recognition of young carers. No policy, no law, no rights, no entitlements, few services, one young carers project, and effectively children's voices were silenced. They were invisible because they were hidden and they were secret. Hidden plus secret equals invisible. And that's the story of young carers. Over the last 30 years, much research has been published, which has made those secret lives more visible. It's revealed the experiences and needs of young carers, what they do, why they do it, who they do it for. And it's also revealed the outcomes of caring on children's psychosocial development, on their education, on their own mental health, and so on. And I've been privileged for 30 years now to be involved in over 50 research projects looking at the lives of young carers, but also promoting their rights and also informing and influencing government policy, law, practice in a number of countries. And it's a real privilege, as I've said, to be able to speak to you again in Australia. So in this presentation, I want to reveal to you half a dozen or so secrets about the lives of young carers. And in so doing, and in making these statements, like this first statement, I want to present to you the evidence that supports the secret that I am exposing. Some of these may be familiar to you because now we've got so much research, these secrets are becoming less secretive and are becoming more revealed, more public. But I'll go through each of the 6 or so secrets that I'm presenting and give you the evidence for why I'm making these claims. So secret 1, there are far more young carers than their parents will disclose. The official figures that many governments produce seriously underestimate the numbers of young carers because of methodological weaknesses and a significant proportion of very young children. This isn't something that's just about 16 or 17-year-olds. There are young carers who are of the age 5, 6, and 7, and so on. Indeed, the average age of young carers in the United Kingdom is 12. Let me now present the evidence. The census in the UK and the England and Wales figures for 2001 and 2011, which asked about the numbers of carers within families, in unpaid carers in families, also then exposed for the first time the numbers of children who were carers. And in this table, based on the 2001 and 2011 census data, you can see that there were 178,000 children and young people who were carers in 2011 in England and Wales. And you can see the proportion of those children who are age 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and so on. So you can see here a profile that shows that according to the official census, 178,000 young people were carers in the UK in 2011. And that's 2 to 3% of all children. However, you can also see that between those 2 census dates, the proportion of young carers increased most significantly in the very youngest age group, 5, 6, and 7. It went up by 83% in the numbers of young carers of those ages between the 2 census dates. The 2021 census will be published shortly, and it will be very interesting when we get those data to see how that profile has changed. But these census data are important because they are the official account. But the reason why they underestimate, in my view, the real extent of caring is because the census is completed by the adult of the household, by the parent or the household owner, or the parent who has an illness or disability, who must then disclose that there is a carer in the family, that the carer is of a young age, between 5 and 17. They must tell us then how many hours these carers care, etc., etc. And I've always argued that this methodology, by asking parents or adults to tell us whether their child is a carer, will always underestimate the true extent of caring. So in 2010 and 2018, I worked with the BBC to do an alternative version of trying to understand how many young carers there were. And rather than relying on adults or parents to tell us if their children were carers, we asked children directly whether they had a caregiving role. We asked children in classrooms, in secondary schools, and we asked them by getting them to fill in a psychometric instrument called the MACA, the Multidimensional Assessment of Caring Activities. And simply put, this has 18 questions, and it's a range of different caring tasks that young carers tell us they do. And we ask a random selection of children to tell us whether they do these things ever or never. And if they say never, they don't do any of these tasks, then they're not a young carer. It's simple. But some of them will say that they do some of those some of the time, and others will say they do a lot of them a lot of the time. And so we're able to work out by children's own self-disclosure, their self-identification, that they are a young carer. This is an alternative methodology to asking parents or adults. It's asking children directly, and it's hearing children's voices. In 2010, our survey of 4,000 pupils revealed that of those 4,000 pupils, 8% told us that they were involved in personal and intimate caring activity, dressing, washing, and showering family members. And 29% told us that they were involved in emotional care, keeping the person they care for company, keeping an eye on them, and taking the person out. At least 8% then of children self-identified as young carers, and that equates to 700,000 young carers in the United Kingdom. That's 4 times more than what the census revealed. In 2018, we repeated the survey, this time with 925 pupils, and they were a representative sample of pupils across the UK. 22%, nearly a quarter, told us that they were caring, and a third told us that they were caring for more than one person. Now, if you take 22% of all children self-identifying as young carers, that equates to a figure of 2 million children in the United Kingdom. That's 12 times more than the census. And again, 1/3 are caring for more than one person. So what you have here already are 2 different surveys which seriously challenge the official figures and reveal a much higher proportion when you ask children directly, as opposed to asking their parents. This methodological selection was also conducted in Ireland. The census in 2016 revealed that 3,800 young carers existed under the age of 15, according to the adults who completed the form, the parents. And that number had fallen from 2011 when they did their previous census. But even with these figures, which are reported by the adults themselves, 79% of these children provided up to 2 hours care a day. And the average was 16 hours a week. And in total, that was 42,227 hours of care per week for all of those children, or 2.2 million hours of care per year provided by 3,800 children, as reported by their parents. But because of the methodological challenges of relying on parent reports, in Ireland, they also conducted a Health Behaviour in School Children 2018 survey, which asks pupils to self-complete, again, a series of questions. And so we identify young carers, not through adults, but through children directly. And this survey found that 13.3% of young people were carers. And if you extrapolate that, that's 67,000 young carers. And the survey also revealed that these young carers had far lower levels of health and well-being and increased mental health problems than other non-caring children. So the point of showing you the Ireland data is to say that, again, you have the same problem that we had with the UK data, which is that the census in Ireland reveals 3,800 young carers. Self-identification reveals 67,000 young carers, which is 18 times more than the Irish census. So what we know is methodology matters. The way that you investigate the numbers of young carers is critical to the figure that you will reveal. Self-report by children directly, asking them directly whether they're a young carer and what they do, reveals far higher numbers than relying on their parents to tell us if their children is a young carer. Across Europe now, a number of countries are beginning to be able to identify the proportion of young carers in their child populations. So in the United Kingdom, you can see the figure of 2 to 3%, which is the official census figures, and you can see the 8 to 22%, which is the figures derived from self-reporting by children themselves. And across other countries, we have a combination of different methodologies, which shows that Norway, it's approximately 6%, Australia, it's been suggested it's 4%, but other figures suggest higher, Switzerland 8 to 10%, etc., etc. Overall, I would suggest that the appropriate proportion of children who are carers in any advanced country is likely to be in the region of 6 to 10%. And that figure, that proportion, is the one that we can most rely on. Secret 2. The people requiring care from their children include parents, siblings, grandparents, and friends. These are people who, because of their illness, disability, condition, or whatever, need care from children. And many children are caring for more than one person. And mental illness and comorbidity are particularly common problems for the people who require care from children. In a survey in 2013 of just under 300 young carers aged 14 to 25, we found that 52% of the people requiring care were the mother, and then it was the father, brothers, sisters, and grandparents. And 1 in 5 of these young carers was caring for more than one person. We also discovered that whilst physical disability of the person who required care comprised 55% of the cases, mental health comprised 49%, just under half, and long-term illness 47%. So here you see that the people who require care have comorbidity, a combination of different conditions. Our survey with the BBC in 2018, which I mentioned before, showed that 46% of the people requiring care were mothers, and then siblings, and so on. And here, 1/3 of children were caring for more than one person. So these two surveys reveal that in the 2013 survey, about 1 in 5 children were caring for more than one person, and by 2018 it was 32%. Children, young carers, are increasingly likely to have to care for more than one person. And indeed, whilst it's mothers who are at the top of that list, it's other family members as well. And the conditions that they have include mental health problems, physical disabilities, and long-term illness, but revealing now drug misuse and alcohol problems in the 2018 survey. And these are often associated with mental ill health. Secret number 3. Many young carers are caring for long hours per week with high levels of responsibility, and they're providing intimate and emotional care alongside other responsibilities. It is a myth to think that young carers are just children who are doing a couple of hours here or there. They're tidying the room, they're cleaning a room, or whatever. These are children that are providing intimate and emotional care in many cases with other specific caring roles, and they're doing a lot of it each week. What's the evidence? Well, the first evidence I present is from the census itself, the 2011 census. And again, based on adult reports, this shows the amount of hours that children are caring each week. You can see that 142,000, or 80% of all young carers, are providing between 1 to 19 hours of care a week. But you can also see that 20% of all young carers are providing over 20 hours of care per week, with 11% of the total providing 20 to 49 hours, and 9% providing over 50 hours. And if that's not bad enough, we can then see by age. So you can see here that 5, 6, and 7-year-olds and 8 and 9-year-olds are providing over 50 hours of care per week for family members, according to the adult or the parent who is telling us this. In a survey in 2013, which I've already mentioned, we used a psychometric instrument, the MACA, which I've already talked about, to measure the amount of caring that a child does. And this psychometric instrument, which is used now in 15 countries, measures the care burden and tells us about the caring tasks that children perform. A score of 14 or more on the MACA indicates that a child is involved in heavy loads of caring. A score of 18 or more on the MACA indicates a child is involved in very heavy loads of caring. So you can see here that for the 14 and 15-year-olds in our sample, the average score was over 15. It was about 16 point something. And you can see as children get older, the 18 to 20-year-olds and the 21-plus-year-olds, their MACA score was nearly 20. So what this survey showed was that all the young carers, including 14 and 15-year-olds, which was the youngest age of the children in our survey, were providing heavy levels of caring. And the older you got, the more you were expected to care and the heavier the load became. Hence, the 18 pluses in this sample were providing almost care levels of nearly 20 on MACA scores. This instrument can be used with non-carers and carers as a screening tool to identify young carers, and was the tool slightly modified that the BBC used in the 2 surveys. In earlier times, in 1995, 97 and 2004, when I first started doing all this research, we did a number of surveys of 641 young carers in the first one to 6,000 young carers in 2004. And we were able to identify the caring tasks and classify them by these headings: domestic help, that's cleaning, tidying, shopping; general and nursing is giving medications, giving injections; emotional care is supervising, being there, dealing with parents who are hearing voices, being supportive; intimate care is helping to the toilet, helping with feeding; sibling care is looking after brothers and sisters; and others include translation where English isn't the first language, dealing with the bureaucracies of welfare systems, doctors, social workers, social security officials, etc. And we can see, and these classifications, these categories have been used in multiple studies by other people since we first identified them in the 1990s. In the 2018 BBC survey, we found that 10% of all our young carers were involved in personal and intimate care: dressing, washing, showering, and helping go to the toilet. And that had grown from 8% in the 2010 survey. We found that 48% of all our young carers were involved in emotional care, keeping the person they care for company, keeping an eye on them, and taking the person out. And that had grown from 29% in our BBC 2010 survey. So what we now have is a profile, the most up-to-date figures of which show that around 10% of all young carers in the United Kingdom will be involved in personal and intimate care, and half will be involved in emotional support. We also found in the 2018 survey that of the 22% of all children that were caring, 32% of these children were involved in high amounts of caring, a MACA score greater than 14, and 9% were involved in very high amounts of caring, a MACA score of greater than 18. Secret 4, the transitions of young carers to higher education, to paid work, and to independence are profoundly problematic. There is little focused support on young carers through these key transition stages, and this leads to inequalities and disadvantage that not only affect young carers as children in real time, but cast a shadow forward and affect their adulthood, their opportunities for paid work, and their future lives. What's the evidence? In 2008 and 2000, I conducted 2 studies about the transitions to adulthood of young carers. And we found that most of these children had cared throughout childhood, that many will continue to care into adulthood, despite the fact that services for young carers in the UK stopped at the age of 18, the caring did not stop. That families expected young carers to do more and more as they got older, that schools were not supportive, that there was a lack of career advice, that young carers had educational problems which disadvantaged them against other children, that those who left school were finding getting work difficult. Leaving home was problematic if you had to leave a younger sibling to do the care that you were providing, or leaving home is problematic if there's no one at home left to provide care. And what these young carers told us was that they needed transitional support. They needed help, particularly around the ages of 15, 16, and 17, so that they could navigate the challenges ahead. And in particular, they had concern about what would happen to them as young carers after the age of 18, when children's services stopped. And because of that, that's why we now have young adult carers, another category, because my work on young adult carers in the UK revealed that for many young carers, the services stopped at 18, we needed to continue to support them. We needed young adult carers services, and that area, if you like, has grown considerably over the last 12, 13 years. In the 2013 survey of young carers and young adult carers, this is particularly important because what I wanted to do here was to show what happened to young carers at different phases of this transition. So here we include young carers at school, young carers at college and university, young carers in paid employment, and young carers who are not in education or training. So what you have here is a profile, if you like, of young carers across this broad transitional stage from 14 to 25. What we found was that the age that these children started caring was on average 10. And of the young carers at school, or the young adult carers at school, 48% enjoyed it, 78% said they were doing well, half said that their school recognized that they were a young carer, but 42% had no recognition or help whatsoever, and a quarter said they were bullied because of caring. By the time they got to university, that position would change. But in fact, 92% of those school children said they would like to go to university. They aspired to go to university, but a quarter thought that they wouldn't be able to afford to go. When they got to college or university after school, and 101 of our sample were at college or university, again, they said the majority that they were enjoying college or university. 69% said they were doing well. And interestingly, 1/3 of these young carers were now on a caring related course: social work, nursing, health and social care programs. And this is a common theme across many research findings, that young carers are predisposed to finding college or university courses or paid employment that's related to caring, because they feel they have the skills and competencies to work in the caring sector. But again, at university and college, nearly half had no recognition or help whatsoever because they were young carers, and 16% thought that they may have to drop out. In reality, 29% did drop out because of their caring roles, and 56% said it was difficult to be at college or university to combine that with caregiving. So, in all of those elements, we can calculate now what caring does on children's absences and lateness at school, at college and university, and at work. At school, we can say that 1/4 of all school days by young carers are affected, and that 5% of those school days will be missed entirely due to caring. At college and university, half of all days are affected, and 3 days per month were missed due to caring responsibilities. And by the time young carers or young adult carers get to the paid labour market, 79 days per year are affected because of caring, and 17 days per year are lost because of caring. And these statistics not only raise major issues for how young carers and young adult carers, if you like, navigate through school, college, and work, but they pose major challenges for those who provide education at schools, colleges, universities, and for employers. Because if we want young people who are carers to get the best of their education, whether it's secondary school, higher education, further education, and to be able to participate best in the labour market, we will have to adjust the way we identify and work with young carers, because we know, because the evidence shows us, that they will be seriously disadvantaged, and we will need to make adjustments. Secret number 5. Whilst the outcomes of caring for children include some positives, many young carers are now experiencing a significant range of negatives, including, and this is the important part, large numbers who are self-disclosing mental health difficulties, and frighteningly, the risk of harm. Let me show you the evidence. We know from lots of research projects that the outcomes of caring can be defined by negative and positive terms: restricted friendships, stigma by association, and so on. We also know from the 2013 survey, the online survey that I've reported, that 45% of the 300 young carers in that survey reported that they had mental health problems. 25% dyslexia, 21% physical disabilities, etc. This shock finding that nearly half of all young carers reported their own mental health problems led us to put in a bid to the Horizon 2020 EU fund to do a four-year study of the mental health of young carers in 6 countries. This is the Me-We project, which started in 2017, 2018, and literally has finished in the last couple of weeks. This looks at the mental health of young carers in the UK, Sweden, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Slovenia, and Italy. And what we know from this survey is that of the 9,000 participants in the survey, 2,099 are the adolescent young carers aged 15 to 17 that we wanted to look at. So this is a survey of just over 2,000 adolescent young carers, 15 to 17 in 6 countries. We can see again who receives care, and it's predominantly mothers, fathers, etc., with significant numbers providing care for more than one person. We can see also the family's health conditions, with again mental illness at 40% of all of the family's health conditions. And that ranges between 57% in the UK to 18% in Italy. And the young carers that are looking after friends as well as family members, those friends in 69% of the cases have mental illness. So again, this reinforces the fact and the finding that young carers are often looking after people with mental health problems. But what we also discovered was that young carers are also increasingly reporting their own mental health difficulties. So 36% said that their own mental health had deteriorated. 19% say that their school performance was negatively affected by caring. 17% reported being bullied. But shockingly, 16% said that they thought about hurting themselves. And that ranged from 9 to 31%, depending on which country. And 7% said that they thought about hurting other people, including the person that they cared for. And that ranged between 4 to 13%. But as with all other studies, this survey also reveals that the higher the level of caring, as measured by the MACA, the higher the level of caring, the more that the young carer will have difficulties at school, the more they are likely to be bullied, and the more they are likely to report their own mental health problems and lower states of well-being as measured by other indicators. These are some figures that just show the difference between different countries, and I'm not going to talk about those. But in the UK, 10% of our young carers reported physical health problems and 56% reported mental health problems. And in the UK, again, relating to self-harm, 31% of our young carers reported self-harming thoughts, and 13% reported thoughts of harm to others. So I've revealed to you 5 secrets, and now I want to tell you what the next stage is. From the revelation of these secrets over time, we have now been able to understand why why children become carers. We know it's to do with the structure of the family. We know it's to do with the disability, the mental illness, the comorbidity of people that becomes a trigger for a child to care. We know that children care because of love and duty, because of a bond, because of an intergenerational contract. We know that there is often, very often, no alternative because families are on low income. We know that there are many children, most children, who care about other family members with low levels of caring responsibility. In fact, most children care about others. But we know that as caring tasks get more complicated, more timely, more intimate, and longer in duration over a childhood, those children move from caring about to caring for. These are the young carers and the adolescent young carers that we're talking about, who experience significant impacts on their lives. And so what's our challenge? Our challenge, indeed our responsibility, is to move young people from a position of vulnerability, from providing excessive care that restricts their education, that affects their well-being, that has a diverse high impact on their childhood. And we need them to move to a position of growth, to learn, to thrive, to achieve, to enjoy, to feel supported and protected, to be identified, assessed, and to flourish as children and to flourish as adults. A number of countries have made great advances over the last couple of decades, and Australia is at the top end of a league table that we publish every few years to show how countries are responding to the challenges of young carers. But there is so much more for all of us to do. And so in concluding today's session, in bringing this to a close, I want us all to move beyond the secret lives of young carers. And to do that, we need much greater awareness of young carers and young adult carers by governments, policymakers, and professionals. We need early interventions that can prevent these caring roles from becoming institutionalized and normalized within families. We know from research over the last 20 years that services and interventions can improve young carers' health, their mental health, their educational experiences, well-being, and their future labour market participation and prospects if we support young carers and intervene at the right times and in the right way. And whole family approaches can be beneficial to young carers and their families, particularly where we can support family members so they don't need to rely on children for care. We know that caring roles can be reduced then when those families receive that adequate support. Targeted support at the key transition points that I've mentioned today will help young carers navigate the complex pathways through higher education, paid work, and independence. But to do that, we need to identify and we need to assess young carers, because without those, we haven't, if you like, got the structure for the interventions that should follow. And more research and evaluations are always needed, especially big data and cohort studies and evaluation studies of what works. I hope that you found this illumination, if you like, of the secret lives of young carers to be revealing. The job of researchers is to cast light on those hidden worlds, on those secret lives, those secret worlds, and to make that research accessible so that people like you and people like me and practitioners and policymakers can actually do things to support young carers and improve their lives and opportunities. Thank you, Australia, for listening, and have a lovely conference.
I'm sure you'll join me in thanking Saul Becker for that fantastic overview of the secret lives of young carers. I think it provided a lot of really rich information and really, I think, consolidated a lot of things that we see and that we know when we work with young carers. So thank you, Saul, for a fantastic discussion. And to post some questions, we can send them over to Saul and get them answered, and then we'll post them on our website afterwards. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed that session.